Welcome to another video about Saturn, and this is Saturn and Venus, and I'm going to have a look. By the way, I'm Veerle de Bruyne, and I'm doing this series of videos of Saturn together with a personal planet. So this one is about Venus, and I'm going to look at the natal chart, what this is all about, then the synastry between Saturn and Venus. And then I'm going to have a look in so synastry, but also in transits. So let's get started. If you have a combination, an aspect in your natal chart between Venus and Saturn, what does it mean? And I mean that there has to be a connection between, like, Venus in a conjunction with Saturn, or Venus in a square with Saturn, or Venus in a trine, Venus in a sextile, or Venus in opposition with Saturn. So all these terms mean that it means that there is a telephone line between these two planets. They are connected to each other. Now Saturn, as I said with the Moon and Saturn video, Saturn is all about discipline, and it's all about restrictions. It's about hard work. It's about discipline. It's about things that are going slow. It's about harshness. It's about, what else? It is about delays. So it's not the easiest planet. A lot of people think that Saturn is not a nice planet, but when you do the hard work and when you commit yourself to it, then you get the rewards of Saturn. Now Venus is, of course, the planet of love, the planet of relationship, the planet of what do we like, what do we desire, what do we think is nice. And of course it depends on the sign it is in and of the house it is in. But if it's in a narrow aspect to another outer planet, it really has the color of that outer planet, so in this case of Saturn. So it's not only what we like, it's also what we think is important in life, what we value. One values a nice car, another one values their children, and so on. It's all about what we think is important in life. It's also about money. How can we attract money, our resources? So our resources, our financial resources, it's also what we eat. It's the second house versus the seventh house of relationships, and the second house of our resources and our confidence. Also, Venus is about how you make choices. Are you good at it or not? I'll give you an example. Someone with a good Venus, let's say Venus in Libra, is able to know what to choose in the best circumstances. And someone who's got an afflicted Venus and who's got like a Venus conjunct the North Node, for instance, the North Node is always when you're not really good at and you need to develop that. And what you often see with people with Venus and the North Node, they're not good at making choices, especially in love. They would pick out, the man who is maybe very, who can be very romantic, but is very hard to live with. So, and it also has to do with the choices that we make. So let's put those two energies together. What do we get then? If you see this in a natal chart, first of all, you will certainly get someone, or the personality will, even if this person has a lot in Jupiterian planets, or has a lot of Sagittarius, or has a strong Neptune, if they have got Venus Saturn aspect, there is a seriousness about them. There is a reserved, how do you say that, posture about them. They are, because Saturn restricts, Saturn makes something cool, and Saturn is also about responsibility. So people who've got this in their relationships, even if it's a fiery Venus, let's say a Venus in fiery Venus in Leo, which is all about, I show you my love, I'm very demonstrative with it, and a very romantic soul. When Saturn is on that Venus, it diminishes the fire of the Leo, you could say. So it is certainly, and you can see it very easily, even in the way they in their clothing. People with Venus Saturn, especially with conjunctions, they have these not strict clothes, but very good design or textures that are hard. Not the very gentle, soft way of clothing. Also uniform-like way of clothing, or maybe when you're a man and you've got this, you prefer to wear a suit. And when you're a woman, you prefer to wear where there's a kind of strict pattern in, or something which has a lot of a bit business-like almost. And these people also have this professionalism around them, always, with the Venus and the Saturn. Even to a sextile or a trine, there is something cool about them, something that keeps them, a bit from a distance. And this is really good, of course, because to do business, any business, it is good that you can stand a bit objective. And also in negotiations, it is one of the best positions to have, this Venus-Saturn, because it makes one more objective and more diplomatic. Saturn is exalted in Libra, for instance, which is the sign of Venus. So Venus likes to be a bit structured and to have a structure around love, you could say, like marriage or a commitment that is formed there. So so these people always have this kind of, no matter what they do, they have this kind of, when you go into business with them, you rely on them, and you see that they are responsible. And the integrity, that was the word that I was looking for. They have this kind of integrity aura. And this is, of course, very good when you, in any business, being, doing what you say and saying what you're doing is very good to attract clients in any profession. So it makes people professional. It makes people having this sense of responsibility. And of course, also in relationships. These people want stability in a relationship. So they may not need it. They may have a moon conjunct Uranus, which is all about I need to do different stuff, and I need to have a bit of unusual stuff going on in my world. But when you've got Venus and Saturn, then you need a stable relationship, even when it's a very let's say a very open Venus in Gemini, for instance, who likes to talk with everyone and every person. But when it's conjunct Saturn, it makes someone shy, timid. But that can be charming as well. I mean, some people think that is charming. I certainly do. But so that is the Venus Saturn, and let's say the better, the positive way of the Venus Saturn. It is, you've got class, you've got style. If you are a man and you have a Venus in a connection to Saturn, you will like these kind of women. You will want a woman like that, who's got style, who is a bit not too demonstrative with their feelings, but who've got class, who've got responsibility. They will like that. And if you are a woman, you are like that, of course. I mean, you are someone who's certainly very committed towards the ones that they love. Now, what's the downside of it? The downside is that other people can perceive you as a bit cold. And it's not necessarily that you are a cold person, but it's just that you have a bit of a challenge in showing what you feel, because it means that you are a bit more protective than others might be. So it's that being protective about your own feelings, because they go very deep and you are very committed, you go very deep, but before you do that, there is this barrier. So especially when you are younger, this shows, and certainly in all the books, you will find a connection between Venus and Saturn is delay for marriage and a delay for relationships. I think we are now in 2014, and this means that, yes, in relationships, when you are younger, it might not be very fluently and very open and very generous. It's all that, you know, maybe a bit later. You will start with relationships, or you will have to work a bit harder up until you find Mr. or Mrs. Right. So that is common. But it doesn't mean to say when you have an aspect between Venus and Saturn that you're never going to be happy with someone. It's just the flavor of that relationship. It's always going to be serious for you when you've got Venus and Saturn. Unless of course that you've got like a Venus in a square in Neptune and another square with Saturn. So that these means two different ingredients. But I'm only picking out now this one ingredient or this one planet of Saturn connecting with Venus. So yes, it can mean that you have to work a little bit harder till you find the right one, and that this is, you are very hard on yourself as well. Especially women with Venus and Saturn, they're hard on themselves, and therefore they're probably very hard on, or they could be hard towards the people that they love as well. So keep that in mind. It's never good enough as well with the Venus Saturn. So there's always this desire to go deeper and to commit yourself on a very deep level. But the good thing is that you're getting better with getting older, because Saturn is the planet of time. And I've seen that with people who've got Venus. I know quite a lot of people with Venus Saturn, and it's like they're getting better. Or feeling better, at least, about themselves and about their relationships when they're over their 35, 40s. What else can it be? Yes, that you are, either a woman or a man, that you are attracted to standing in society. And what do I mean by that? So people think that's a negative thing, you know, or some people think that if you want some social status, you know, a good car, a decent car and all of that, that is, you know, nowadays it's almost like there is this trend, if you want to be spiritual, you want to, you know, having clothes on that are a bit like, you know, grunge, or how do you call that? No, it doesn't have to be necessarily like that. A Venus-Saturn person really wants quality. Not only in relationship, but also in you know, it wants to be respected and respectful towards others. And therefore, yes, they will prefer, if they ride a car, that it's not a car of €1,000, for instance, but a bit more of quality. My car is like that, but anyway. So it is very important for them that they are looking for quality before quantity. This is very much about the Venus-Saturn person. And what else? Yes, it's not, if you see this, it's not the most passionate person, Venus-Saturn, if this is the strongest aspect that you have with another outer planet. But it is a person that you can rely on, and often in relationships they will take responsibility very strictly. So it will have to be already the relationship that is really causing them a lot of damage before they are going to step out of it. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing, but that's because I feel responsible. So good in business, I already said that. Yes, now let's have a look. So this is for the ones who have this in a natal chart. It's definitely something. The negative thing is a bit, you know, it's a bit cool. It makes a person a bit more of a distance. It's not easy to, if you want to know them, it's not that easy. You just need time and patience, and then when you're in, they will trust you 100%. So it's more of a protective position, you could say. The positive about it is that they have class, they have style, they are good in business, they are good in doing things, and they are very responsible in their relationship. So that's very positive. Now, when you're having a Saturn transit on your Venus, what does that mean? So let's say you have a Saturn and it's bang on your Venus, or it's opposing your Venus. So that will be, I'm speaking now when Saturn is in Scorpio. Of course, it's almost going to be in Sagittarius at the end of the year. But let's say, yeah, you can have an opposition, you can have a square, and these are the more harsh aspects. So what does it mean? I hear that a lot. Does it mean that the relationship is going to break up? No, I don't think so. Not always. I think a thing like, because Saturn is a planet of harshness and a planet of responsibility, and when it touches Venus, people think, okay, we're going to divorce or something. I think in breakups, you have to see more than just one aspect transit. That's my experience. That's just my humble opinion. Because I'm not going to say that someone's going to break up with a Saturn transit at all. I've seen many people having Saturn transits and even starting a relationships. And that will be if you, let's say you're single and you're meeting someone and you're starting a relationship, it will have the flavor of Saturn. And people say, oh, it's not passionate and it's not good. It means that it's exactly what you need at that particular time, because it means that the relationship will have these qualities that I just described: responsible, serious, deep, and so on. So it is not necessarily a bad thing. Let's say you are in a relationship and it's going fine, it's going all right, it's an ordinary relationship, and Saturn is coming up. It can mean that the commitment grows stronger. Maybe you're deciding to get a child, or maybe you're deciding to get married. So anything that has to do with commitment. But yes, it can mean that if you have a, not the finest relationship, it's a very testing time, having Saturn then connecting to your Venus. Let's say you're having a bad relationship or you're not content at all. Saturn is reality check. So it's going to show you what's good and it's going to show you what's not good. And of course, it's up to you if you decide I won't be satisfied with this or not. So Venus is a lot about choices, making your choice. What am I going to do? Am I going on with it or not? And why? What do I value? What do I think is important? So of course, it can mean that someone, especially I've seen it with squares, so the Saturn squaring up to your Venus is a very testing time. And that is that, the reality. It can mean that maybe a couple of years ago, you have known someone at a time when Neptune was playing a role, and let's say a year later, you've got Saturn transit, and then you see, oh my God, I was in love, but I was blind. That kind of thing. But again, I would always, if I look at the natal chart, I would always ask for some context, and I would also look at other things. So mostly I've seen breakups as more a Uranus thing and more a Pluto thing. So Uranus or Pluto to your Venus, or to the moon, yes, Venus and the moon if you're a man, and Venus and the moon and the sun if you're a woman. But again, the combination of Uranus and Saturn transit at the same time on your Venus or on a Venus and a moon can suggest indeed breakups. But again, there has to be a lot in the chart to see that. You can't just simply see that by a Saturn transit on your Venus. So don't always think if Saturn is coming along, my relationship. No. What it does is it shows you reality. It shows you exactly as it is. And sometimes it can be like that. Sometimes you really can say, oh, thank you, God, for what I've got. And sometimes you can really say, my goodness, I have to step out of here. So it's different in every person, is unique, of course. But Saturn is real. So it's really saying get your head out of the clouds. It's not the most passionate transit at all. So it really depends where you're at in life. So let's have a look in synastry. What does it mean if one person's Saturn is aspecting another person's Venus? Let's start with a conjunction. So the two planets are making a conjunction together. Saturn is always the planet of commitment. So when you see that in synastry, one person Saturn versus another person personal planet, it's always a kind of a commitment, and it's always a testimony of long-term relationships, or at least a bond that two people feel. Now, Venus and Saturn in a conjunction often means that there can be an age difference, or it can mean that one is playing a bit the parent role. And some people can find that that is okay. You know, the codependency, it's okay between the two, but others, certainly the person that feels the Saturn person as being a bit more as a parent, and even if this person has other planets in their horoscope, like more Uranus-like, more Uranus energy, this person won't like that and feel restricted because of that. So there is, but certainly there is a responsibility towards each other on both sides. It's like, you could say, I owe you one, maybe from other lives. It's that feeling, and that creates the bond between the two. Now in oppositions, it's often that the one plays a Saturn role and the other one plays a very Venusian role of being attractive and being nice and having no boundaries, almost, you could say. So when it's in an opposition, it can be very hard to balance these two energies out. Now, in a trine or a sextile, I think it's a good thing to have in synastry. This energy of commitment. It may not be the most passionate relationship, so it certainly doesn't show passion between two people, but it shows deep feelings of commitment and responsibility. That certainly. Now the square is again the hardest, I think. That's only what I've seen in horoscopes that I'm doing. That the squares, so when someone's Saturn is squaring up to someone else's Venus, it's always about delays, or not necessarily delays, just impossible to be together. And it's a bit of the Romeo-Juliet aspect, you could say. It can also mean that sometimes, you know, two people are drawn to each other and they feel a strong commitment, a strong bond, but either one is in another relationship or they are both related to someone else. So because of the restrictions, responsibilities towards others, they can't come together. I've seen that quite a lot with Saturn and Venus squaring up in synastry. But in general, it's so the square and the opposition is the hardest. And conjunction can also be a bit tough, but it depends on the individual. So if the one that receives the Saturn of another person on their Venus, and if that person is okay with the fact that they are protected, like a bit that parent feeling, if they're okay with that, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there is always a kind of a dependency in a relationship, no matter what. So certainly with Saturn around. But the sextile and the trine are very good to have in synastry. So that was Saturn and Venus. Hope you have learned something. Please share your experiences with it in your comments. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon. Bye bye.